Hey Chris Tomers, how do you like that name? I thought it would be fitting since every fanbase needs a name, and today we're gonna piss off every single fanbase in existence. Yeah, K-pop, more like K-poop. I'm just kidding. Please don't kill me. But yeah, you guys voted for it, so today we're gonna be talking about stan culture, as well as some of the psychology that's behind celebrity worship. Fasten your seatbelts everybody, because it can get pretty crazy. Celebrity worship is far from a new phenomenon. From the Beatlemania of the 1960s to the Romans who collected the sweat of gladiators and used it as perfume, people have always put celebrities on a pedestal. Now, before we go any further, I need to make an important distinction. If you consider yourself a stan just because you passionately support and admire somebody, then there's nothing wrong with that. The problem arises with fans who overstep boundaries in creepy and obsessive ways. If left unchecked, the innocuous love and admiration for a celebrity can mutate into unquestioning worship. So, to avoid any unnecessary semantic debates or misunderstandings, let's take a look at the widely accepted consensus on what it means to be a stan. The top Urban Dictionary definitions of stan agree that the term entails a certain level of obsession, with descriptions such as a crazed and obsessed fan, an overzealous maniacal fan, and an over-obsessed fan to the point of following a star around. In case you didn't already know, the term stan is a portmanteau of the words stalker and fan that originated from the Eminem song Stan. The song is about an obsessive fan of Eminem named Stan who becomes increasingly angry when Eminem doesn't respond to his letters. As a result of his rage, Stan puts his girlfriend in the trunk of his car and drives off a bridge, killing himself and his girlfriend who was pregnant with his kid. While the origin of the term would definitely attest that it's not a good thing to be considered a stan, these days people use the term stan to signify support and adoration, and it's become pretty normalized to be a stan of somebody. Perhaps the most positive definition of the term comes from this entry. Stan means you look up to that person, you watch them, or you truly love their content. It's another word for saying you idolize someone or something. You would say, I stan blank, instead of, I love that person. However, idolizing someone still implies a form of worship and veneration. But regardless of any negative implications of the term, stan culture has become ingrained into the mainstream. There are many problems with stan culture and celebrity worship, so let's start with one of the most obvious ones. If you're a celebrity who reaches millions of people, then at one point, the fascination of some of your fans is bound to cross the line into obsessive territory. Although these really obsessive fans are typically seen as the fringe minority of a fanbase, because of the absolute size of some of these fanbases, even a tiny percentage might equate to a fairly large number of people. Anyone in the spotlight can garner obsessive fans, but people who are involved in fields such as film, television, and music are more likely to attract the adoration of these gushing fans. As an article published in January 2015 in the North American Journal of Psychology states, basically, the more often people watch television for almost any reason, the stronger their level of celebrity worship. People report that they use television to satisfy their needs. For example, the motives of entertainment, inclusion, and arousal. And possibly a result of their television watching behavior is their celebrity worship. Most fans generally respect the boundaries and privacy of the person they're supporting, but there's always exceptions to the rule. When you reach a certain level of fame, people may start to treat you like nothing more than a figurehead who exists for the sole purpose of entertainment, and your right to a private life will be intruded upon by the vultures of the paparazzi. It might even get to the point that a few fans will feel like they're entitled to stay outside somebody's house just because they supported them. Thankfully, the vast majority of people agree that this is creepy and a complete breach of privacy, but there's still a few people who just didn't seem to get the memo. If you're watching this video, you're most likely familiar with K-pop stans. If you've ever been on Twitter and you just saw a reply that just has a bunch of people you don't know dancing, then you know what I'm talking about. Those are called fancams, by the way, but if you thought spamming fancams was the craziest thing K-pop stans have done, then you'd be sorely mistaken. Because today, we're going to be talking about something that goes way beyond that. That's right, we're going to be talking about the sasaengs. Again, it's important to mention that in no way am I saying this is representative of the K-pop fanbase as a whole. These are just the more extreme cases. Sasaeng fans are extremely obsessive fans who stalk their idols and intrude upon their personal lives. In addition to following them around everywhere, they will actively try to seek out their idol's personal information. In fact, one time, a fan wrote a letter to a K-pop star with her period blood that says, "You can't live without me." Aw, how romantic. Some of these fans will also hijack the flights that their idols are on. Imagine you're on your flight and you're just trying to get some rest because you're so tired and you still can't get away from these people. Imagine you're just trying to pee, but you can't even do that because your fangirls have decided to dress up as men so they can go inside the bathroom and take pictures of you. To quote my main man John Scarce, it's pretty crazy and it's pretty insane. There have even been instances of fans cutting themselves and carving the names of their idols. Some of these people will even hide cameras in their idols' bathrooms. It's just nuts. These people definitely need help, and there are many more examples of crazy sayings that I just won't cover because there's not enough time, so let's stick to talking about general fan bases. As you know, with most fandoms comes fanfiction, and there's a lot of stuff that you wouldn't even think about. You know, if you want to write Ben Shapiro fanfiction, nobody's stopping you, dude. The internet is free. And if I ever became super big, I'd imagine there'd probably be some fanfiction of me as well. Something along the lines of, I started breathing heavily as Christopher Tom stared into the abyss of my soul. See, I'm even helping you write it. But sometimes this sort of thing can cross boundaries, like when people ship actual human beings. Now for those of you who are unaware, to ship is to discuss, write about, or take an interest in a romantic relationship between fictional characters. So it's one thing to ship, for example, Bakugo and Deku. I mean, that would be very weird, but at least you're not shipping actual people. But one example of a real-life ship would be Jacksepticeye and Markiplier, also known as Septiplier. Jacksepticeye understandably did not like the inappropriate fan art and fanfiction depicting him and Markiplier, and the ship made them uncomfortable. If you think all of this sounds really weird and stupid, then keep in mind that most of the people shipping them are probably kids, so don't go too hard on them. Though it is pretty funny to imagine some 70-year-old man in a nursing home somewhere just shipping YouTubers. If you're so obsessed with a certain celebrity to the extent that you're really emotionally invested in their personal relationships and it consumes such a huge part of your life, then that's just not good for your mental health. In fact, celebrity worship syndrome is an actual obsessive addictive disorder. In a study from 2003 called A Clinical Interpretation of Attitudes and Behaviors Associated with Celebrity Worship, researchers came up with the name celebrity worship syndrome to describe a disorder in which people become overly involved with a celebrity's personal life. The condition could be broken down into 3 independent dimensions: entertainment social, intense personal, and borderline pathological. According to Psychology Today, the entertainment social dimension relates to attitudes where individuals are attracted to a celebrity because of their perceived ability to entertain and to become a social focus of conversation with like-minded others. The intense personal dimension relates to individuals that have intensive and compulsive feelings about a celebrity. The intense personal dimension, however, has been associated with neuroticism, symptoms of depression and anxiety, and concerns about body image, according to a report from the Journal of Behavioral Addiction. The borderline pathological dimension relates to individuals who display uncontrollable behaviors and fantasies relating to a celebrity. The borderline pathological dimension has been described in the report as reflecting extreme attitudes and behaviors toward a celebrity that are considered as maladaptive forms of admiration. For example, if one's favorite celebrity asked the person to do something illegal as a favor, he or she would do it. This dimension has been related to narcissism, psychoticism, and tendencies toward criminal behaviors and addiction. There are people who will send you death threats just because you have a different opinion about their favorite celebrities. And while you could just say that all you need to do is block somebody if they're really giving you that much grief, the problem here is that with stans, they form groups. So even if you block one stan, there's a whole bunch of other stans who will harass you, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And of course, they're also protected by the anonymity of the internet. I mean, you don't even have to criticize something that hard, and you're still gonna have hordes of angry fans who are just that strongly opposed to what you're saying. Here's the thing, we don't have to like the same things. Could you imagine just how boring the world would be if we all thought the exact same way? But in addition to some stans being annoying, they can also play a part in enabling some pretty bad things. For example, let's look at Drake, who, aside from making terrible music, has a history of suspicious interactions with minors.
So there have been allegations made against Drake and Millie Bobby Brown because it seems like a strange friendship between a 14-year-old and a 31-year-old. Before Millie Bobby Brown, there was someone else who was also young, but this time Drake was actually in a relationship with them, which is why people are weirded out. To me, it just seems bizarre, like to choose to hang out with people that are that much younger than you. In this video, if you didn't hear, Drake says, "I can't go to jail yet, man. Why'd you look like that? You thick, look at all this. Well, look, I had fun. I don't know whether I should feel guilty or not, but I had fun. I like the way your breasts feel against my chest. I just want to thank you. I don't expect to be felt up and kissed by that male musician. It's strange when someone of his age is seen multiple times hanging out with younger women. Billie Eilish just said in her Vanity Fair video that Drake is the nicest person ever and she has only talked to him through text. I'm sorry, but after the news came out a while ago that 33-year-old Drake was texting 14-year-old Millie Bobby Brown, this is creepy as hell. Agreed. Another wrote on Twitter, is it bad that I'm watching a Billie Eilish interview and she's like, Drake is the nicest dude I've ever spoken to, and the sirens started going off in my brain, lol.
That would end most people's careers, and yet Drake's career remains unscathed.
I'm working on dying.
I'm upset.
I don't care. And let's take a look at Chris Brown. Now, you may know him as the guy who brutally beat up Rihanna, but if you thought that was the only bad thing he's ever done, then you'd be sorely mistaken. In fact, let's have the legend Gus Johnson walk you through some of his misdeeds.
June 2013, Brown is accused of assaulting a woman at a San Diego nightclub. She tells police that he was pushing her in the VIP section and she filed a lawsuit against him. November 2013, Brown is discharged from the rehab center after throwing a rock through his mother's car window while she was visiting him. What? He threw a rock at his mom's car while she was visiting him in anger management rehab. What? On paper, that's the most outrageous thing ever.
There's so much more, and yet Chris Brown still has a very successful career because so many of his fans just make excuses for his awful behavior.
You're just a hater. People can change. You're just jealous.
And sure, serious misdeeds may cause some spikes in public discourse, but at the end of the day, the celebrity status these people hold prevents them from having to take too much accountability for their actions. Now, what I'm about to discuss is not representative of stan culture as a whole, and it's a very extreme example. However, I still feel the need to talk about it. There are entire communities of fangirls fawning over people like the serial killer Ted Bundy and the Columbine shooters. If you look up Ted Nation on Twitter, you'll find stans of Ted Bundy who will insist that he was innocent. There are also people in the bowels of Tumblr who are stans of the Columbine shooters and will draw fan art and write fanfiction of them. I mean, you could have just stuck with Big Time Rush, but you just had to be an edgelord about it. But apparently, this has been a thing for a while. This is known as hybristophilia. Hybristophilia is defined by the APA Dictionary of Psychology as sexual interest in and attraction to those who commit crimes. In some cases, this may be directed toward people in prison for various types of criminal activities. Catherine Ramsland, PhD, a professor of forensic psychology at DeSales University, says, primarily, the idea is that they want to get close to a violent person so that they can either participate in a fantasy life that involves them, or actually become partners with them. In 1980, Bundy married a woman by the name of Carol Ann Boone. When she was asked to describe him during his murder trial, she used the words kind, warm, and patient. Despite all the evidence against him, she also said to the jury, "I've never seen anything in Ted that indicates any destructiveness towards any other people. He's a large part of my life. He is vital to me." Bundy then proposed to her right then and there. Many of his fans showed up to his trial.
Every time he turns around, I kind of get that feeling, oh no, he's gonna get me next,
But yet you're fascinated by him.
Very, very. Every night when I go to bed, I just, I get very scared. I shut my door and lock him,
I'm not afraid of him. He just doesn't look like the type to kill somebody.
As extreme as it might sound, the infatuation these young women feel towards these serial killers isn't too unlike the romantic fantasies that stan culture often entails. Both cases involve being in love with a celebrity who doesn't exactly reciprocate in their actions. It's a pretty one-sided relationship. Catherine Ramsland further explains, "There's the notion of the perfect boyfriend. She knows where he is at all times, and she knows he's thinking about her. While she can claim that someone loves her, she does not have to endure the day-to-day issues involved in most relationships. There's no laundry to do, no cooking for him, and no accountability to him. She can keep the fantasy charged up for a long time." She has a point there. If your man's behind bars, then at least you know he's not gonna cheat on you. Unless he likes dropping the soap. While some of this can certainly be attributed to a lack of knowledge or a particularly phenomenal ability to separate art from the artist, a lot of it can also be traced to their legions of unquestioning fans who make excuses for them. These fans may think their idols are perfect, but they're not, and blindly supporting them isn't going to help them mature or improve as people. It's as if this blind allegiance to their idols overrides any critical thinking or introspection on their part. Much of the infatuation with celebrities is based on a false perception of them. Because of how lucrative celebrity culture can be for various people and corporations, there's a big incentive to carefully control the public image of a celebrity in order to appeal to as many people as possible. The public image of a celebrity often downplays their weaknesses and accentuates their strengths, which effectively controls how the public perceives them. As a result, people from the outside looking in will often make incorrect assumptions about the celebrity based on what they see, as if they know them on a personal level. In reality, you're usually only seeing what a celebrity's PR team wants you to see, or in the context of modern social media influencers, you're only seeing what they choose to share with you. While manufacturing your public image may be effective in the context of marketing, it can create a serious problem if the celebrity is unable to sufficiently live up to the image they project. One example of somebody who is just as nice off camera as he was on television is Mr. Rogers, and that's a big part of why people love him. But unfortunately, not everyone is Mr. Rogers. It's not hard to see why fans may be disappointed or let down when someone they looked up to starts acting in a way that doesn't line up with their public image. I'm not trying to insinuate that every celebrity is outright deceptive or trying to mislead people. Being selective about how you choose to portray yourself and carefully curating what you put out into the world isn't inherently dishonest. For example, if you only post positive things on your Instagram, like photos of you on vacation or hanging out with your friends, but you don't post photos of you crying or having a breakdown, then I would not consider that dishonest. It makes sense that there are some things you're just not comfortable sharing with people. What is wrong, however, is if you were to act like the highlights you post on social media are perfectly representative of your life. But even if you do try to be transparent about who you are, people are still going to make incorrect assumptions about you and assume they know the full reality of what it's like to be you. This is just unavoidable to an extent, though it certainly doesn't help that some celebrities play into the false perception the public has of them. A good rule of thumb is to just not idolize anyone. And I'm not advocating for idolizing yourself either, because as human beings, none of us are infallible. However, many stans are convinced that the person they're idolizing is perfect and can do no wrong. In addition to offering their unquestioning loyalty and support, the most devoted stans feel like they have a relationship with a celebrity, even if the celebrity in question has no idea they even exist. These sorts of psychological relationships are known as parasocial relationships, which are defined as one-sided relationships where one person extends emotional energy, interest, and time, and the other party, the persona, is completely unaware of the other's existence. Celebrity worship may not be a new phenomenon, but social media has fundamentally altered the dynamics of how celebrities can interact with their fans. It's never been easier for fans to interact with celebrities, and vice versa. In fact, now there's actually a chance that the celebrity may acknowledge you or see your comments on social media. This is especially true for influencers. As you can tell, I really hate that term, but it is what it is. If I ever call myself an influencer, please kick my ass and copulate with my wife, because at that point I've become such a massive, unrecognizable bag. Just kidding, I don't have a wife, but you can take my 12 kids, because they deserve a better dad. The day I start calling myself an influencer is the day I join an MLM and start trying to sell you essential oils on Instagram or something. But celebrity culture, influencer culture, it's mainly just a bunch of plastic people trying to suck you into their plastic world. I mean, what is celebrity culture even, really? I'm just saying that the celebrity lifestyle isn't as glamorous as you might think. Hollywood in general is just a really ugly place full of sinister sociopaths who have no qualms abusing their power to get what they want out of you. And no amount of vapid sing-alongs will change that. Whether or not you believe selling your soul to the devil is a figure of speech or something meant to be taken literally, the point remains. Fame really isn't all that it's cracked up to be, and it certainly isn't something to idolize. In many cases, it comes at the price of something greater. With all that being said, there are some positive things to be said about stan culture. Communities and fandoms can be great places to meaningfully connect with others, and shared interests can act as a springboard for forming genuine, long-lasting friendships. As previously mentioned, celebrity worship syndrome exists on a spectrum, and not everybody worships celebrities and takes things to the extreme. Whether we like it or not, celebrities occupy a big part of our social discourse, often providing ways for us to communicate our ideas and giving us opportunities to form our own judgments and solidify our moral values. To give a somewhat recent example, think about the controversy of iDubbbz responding to fans who were critical of his girlfriend and her, business practices. It might be easy to dismiss this as nothing more than inconsequential YouTube drama, but some people were able to use it as a springboard to discuss deeper topics, such as whether or not sex work is moral, and how sex workers are often exploited. Topics that some people may not have talked about if it wasn't for the drama surrounding them. Furthermore, celebrities can also use their massive platform and influence over their fans to support good causes. Unfortunately, these positive aspects are often overshadowed by the more concerning drawbacks. Some of the experts who have studied celebrity worship syndrome believe that the deeper levels of it reflect an attempt to soothe an empty self. After all, if you're constantly spending time obsessing over someone who doesn't even know that you exist, then that's time that's not being invested in personal development or introspection. While it might be tempting to blame the more malignant facets of stan culture and social media, celebrity worship has likely existed as long as celebrities have. Modern-day technological advances in marketing machines have just supercharged it. Much of popular culture promotes a false gospel of materialism, with promises of glamour and riches to entice new converts. Even in mainstream Christianity, the prosperity gospel rears its ugly head, perverting a gospel that preaches selflessness into a self-centered one that prioritizes material wealth.
Don't you stop sowing offerings. Well, they won't let us go to church. Well, email it in there, text give or something, but you get your tithe in that church. If you have to go take it down there and drop it off and stick it under the door or something, you get that tithe in that church, 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 and then you go home.
My wife thinks Inside Edition is, oh yeah.
Many people think that once they get the fame and fortune they've always wanted, that they'll finally be happy. But money and social status cannot fill the void. Nobody's worth is defined by how rich or successful they are. Remember that things aren't always as they seem, and in the end, a life spent chasing pleasure and luxury is going to be far less fulfilling than a life of virtue, achievement, and selfless service. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you liked the video. If you've been following my community posts here on YouTube or my posts on social media, then you've probably heard about the health situation with my eyes. Basically, I got diagnosed with blepharitis, which is essentially inflammation of the eyelids, and this has made it considerably harder to make content and to just live my life. I might make an update video about it soon where I go into more detail, since I'm still not entirely sure what I'm gonna do with the channel. Starting with this video, I'm gonna have to be outsourcing a lot more, so if you would like to help contribute to that, I'll leave a link to my Patreon in the description. You don't have to do it, and there's zero pressure if you don't want to, but I want to make you aware of the option if it's something that interests you. I can't guarantee that I would be getting videos out faster, but thank you so much for all the very sweet messages of kindness and support you guys have been sending me regarding my health. It sincerely means a lot to me, and getting to interact with you guys is one of my favorite parts of being a YouTuber. Also, thank you for getting Plastic People over 1,000 plays on Spotify. That is absolutely epic. You love to see it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.